Hey YouTube, Bill here. It's almost Thanksgiving. It's time to make some cranberry sauce. So for this recipe, all you need is 3 ingredients: cranberries, plain white sugar, and water from the tap. And in my case, I have to make enough for a crowd. So I got 4 bags there, but I like to make a lot of extra too, because I'll can it and we'll use it for if we have a turkey for Christmas, or if we have any kind of makes a great sauce for like a pork roast or anything like that. It's a great supplement. So I typically will make some for fresh eating for Thanksgiving. And then I also can stuff. So I got my equipment here for canning. I got some canning jars, just a few random ones that I had around. 2 different sizes shouldn't be a problem because I'll can it for the time for the largest container. So other than that, for canning, need a pot of water. I have a big pot there. I use hot water because it takes a long time to boil a big pot of water, and you need a lot of water. Usually what I will do is turn on the kettle to have extra water boiling, just in case in the process I boil down too much and need to add some, in order, because when you can, you need the water above the lids. A few other pieces of equipment. I have a funnel. I have these tongs for picking up the hot jars, a ladle, 2-piece lids. There's a little heat sensitive gasket in there that's a one-time use thing. So you got to buy new lids. You can reuse the rings. This part of the lid is called the ring. So you can use the same rings, although that one I probably should replace because it's got a big dent in it. And then I use one of these that's a basket to keep the glass from directly touching the bottom. It keeps, when you put the jars in, and that glass doesn't fit. So when you put the glass in, it doesn't sit on the bottom of the pan, because the bottom of the pan is too hot for the glass to handle. It's fine in the boiling water, but not fine in the heat. And then, of course, my good old trusty Ball Blue Book canning guide. My recipe, if you can see that there, it calls for cups of cranberries and cups of sugar. The problem is they don't sell cranberries by the cup. They sell them by the ounce, 12-ounce bags specifically. So I've done the math over and tried and errored and tried again, and I've come up with my note there: 1 cup of water and 1 cup of sugar per 12-ounce bag. So that's how we like it. And then when you come in here, this is talking about pints. Process 15 minutes in a boiling water canner, and I'll show you that process when we get to it. But first, we got to make some cranberry sauce. Fairly simple directions. You got to wash the cranberries, pick out any that are particularly poor condition, and then drop them into a pot with water. Wait till it comes up to the water and sugar. Sorry. Wait till it comes up to a simmer. You don't want it to be a super overwhelming splattery boil that's going to spray your whole kitchen with cranberry sauce. But it's got to boil. You got to rupture those berries and turn it into cranberry jelly. Alright, and we'll get to that in just a second. So my cranberries are washed. I will go through them as I put them in the pan, and most of them are good. Every so often you get one kind of looks like that. It's got, like, it's pale white, it's wrinkled, it's got a bad spot on it. I usually will toss those. The ones that are closer to white actually have higher levels of pectin than the ones that are dark red. So I don't generally pick through and selectively only get the ripest berries like you typically do when you're making any other kind of fruit recipe. But in this case, there's another one there. Like, I'll toss that, and you probably don't even need to, because cranberries are these super fruits. They have such high acid in them. If you eat one fresh and raw, they are so incredibly sour that you typically don't have to worry. You could buy a bag of cranberries, put it in your fridge, forget about it for 2, 3, 4 months, and it'd probably still be perfectly good without issue. So I'm going to load them into the pan as I go through them. I'm just going to pick through, make sure there's no bad ones. I'll be right back. Alright, so we have 4 cups of water added into the cranberries, because we had 4 bags of cranberries, and we have 4 cups of sugar added into the cranberries, because we had 4 bags of cranberries. I like this approach because it makes it nice. No measuring cups and calculating numbers. You just 1 for 1 for 1. So one of the things when you do this, they tell you can mix it up at the beginning while the berries are still firm, but you don't want to really beat up your cranberries here once it starts getting hot, because as it does, then you'll end up with a problem where they'll start rupturing, but they're not rupturing from the heat, they're rupturing from the agitation. So you want to actually let them heat up and actually rupture on their own. But I just turned the burner on, so it's not even close to hot. So we'll get back to this in just a minute when it's starting to heat up a little bit. Starting to get a little steamy here. Not quite there. And if you follow the exact specific letter of the law recipe, the correct process is to add the sugar and water to the pot, bring it to a boil for 5 minutes, then add the cranberries. And if you're making it just fresh, not processing at all, the official, technically correct part of that is that you're sterilizing the water. The idea that if you were using water from someplace not necessarily free of microbes, you might need to sanitize your water first. I don't think that's particularly necessary. The other advantage is it lets you stir and dissolve the sugar, but since I'm using less sugar than the original recipe calls for, it's not a big deal. Okay, now we're boiling. So, well, mostly boiling. This side isn't boiling. Got to stir it just a little. Just can't help yourself. So, now officially, what we need to do is continue to boil it until all of the skins have burst. We don't want it too hot, because if you do, it's going to foam up and overflow the pan and make a mess of my stove. And I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes making cranberry jelly and 2 or 3 hours cleaning up after making cranberry jelly. And it's tough to really know truly when it's actually done. You can do the same kind of thing you do when you're making other kinds of jams and jellies, where you stick a plate in the freezer and then you put a little dollop of the stuff on the ice cold frozen plate. Give it a couple minutes to cool down, and then you rub your finger through it to see if it leaves a thick telltale streak through it. Generally though, I just play it by eye, go based on experience. It's not a lot to it. This is basically done. The only question is has it gone long enough to actually get all the the skin's popped. I can still see some, I don't know if you can see it through the steam, but I can still see some fairly whole berries, so we're going to go ahead and say that it's not quite done. Maybe another couple minutes. Alright, my water had come to a boil for my canning pot, but I turned it off because I didn't want to boil it away. Because despite what I said at the beginning, I forgot to actually bring extra water to a boil. I did go and actually grab a different jar that'll fit in the canner. I think we're just about there. Now, if you were going to serve this fresh, that's pretty much all you have to do. You put this into a bowl. Obviously, if you're serving fresh for a typical family, you put it into a bowl and chill it, and it would have been 1 bag of cranberries. But because this is going to be for probably something on the order of 14 people or so, and I wanted extra. As I said, I have 4 bags of cranberries here. Alright, and that's pretty much it. That's blow the steam away, see if I can push some of the foam off the top. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all the berries popped. Yeah, there might be a couple more left. Alright, I'm going to just give this another minute. See, the sauce is starting to get a little syrupy. If you can see. You can see the condition of the berries. That's how you want them to look. And I gave it a taste, and it's perfect. So we are done with step 1. If you want to just know how to make fresh cranberry sauce, you can go ahead and stop there. I trust I don't need to explain to you how to pour it into a bowl. But the next part is put it in the canning jars to can it. Alright, we're ready to go with our canning setup. You can see what I did here with put all my jars into this base thing. If you don't have one of these, you don't need one of these. You can, for countless, probably centuries, people just would put a clean dish towel on the bottom of their canning kettle, put the jars on top of the dish towel, and it keeps the jar bottoms off the bottom of the pan. So now all I'm gonna do, take out a good hearty scoop, fill the jar. The idea is you want to get it to 1/4 inch of headspace. And I find that 1/4 inch of headspace is typically when you fill it to that very bottom of this funnel here. That's pretty much 1/4 inch of headspace. Let's find out how we did. Lift it straight out, and we put it into the next one. And you can see 1/4 inch of headspace. And I'll rotate and repeat. The reason I am rotating is because one of the most important steps when canning is you got to make sure that you don't get any splatter onto your lids of your jars, or the edges of your jars, not the lids. And that might be a little too much. Yep, that's a little too much. And what's going to happen is, if I find out that I have too much, I'll have to take a couple tablespoons out. But if I ended up not using a funnel, or missed, or whatever happened, and I drip all down the side of the jar, I'm going to have to try and clean off the tops of my jars, because you need to actually make sure that your jars are totally clean on the top. And you can see there's a little bit there. Maybe you can't see. Yeah, you can see that on camera. So I'm going to grab a paper towel, and I'm going to wipe it off, and I'm going to take a couple tablespoons out of that jar, this jar that's too full, and I'll be right back. Okay, my jars are wiped off. You can see what I was talking about with the cleaning up the mess. Put the lids on. The idea is this piece goes there, and then this ring goes on. And I'm going to need 2 hands for this. You need to get it what they call finger tight. You don't really want to crank it down, because what happens as you're canning is you're heating this thing up, and as you heat it up, the 1/4 inch of headspace that's in there will heat up, and it seeps out through the sealed gasket. And as it seeps out, being hot and expanding, when it cools, it suctions down this lid right here. You can see the little dimple in the center. It'll suck that down, and it'll make the jar airtight. So it's really not difficult. You just gotta, it's just a finger tight. Like you need 2 hands. You gotta have Teflon hands, because the glass jar is quite hot. It's at the temperature of boiling jelly jam. So, and I'm just gonna tighten that down real quick. Okay, we're back to, they're tightened down. My water's back to boiling. And if we look, the recipe calls for process 15 minutes in a boiling water canner. That's for pints. If we look back up at the top, the recipe was calling for using pints. So it's 15 minutes for pints. Typically it's 5 extra minutes for a larger container, sometimes 10 depending on what you're canning. Now, this is going to be the hard part, because I want to try and get this part on camera. Hopefully I won't splash boiling water all over myself. So the idea is that I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put this down into the canning kettle, and you need to slowly lower it, and you get it down in there. Now it's in, it needs to be covered fully by water, and it needs to be fully boiling water. And if it's not fully boiling, you can't start your timer until the water is back to a full boil. My water is at a full boil, so I'm going to put on my timer here for 15 minutes. And it's just watching water boil, so I'll be right back. Alright, we just finished boiling here. And we can reach back and that's it. Those are now officially canned. But when you see, as I pull them out of the water, dump the bulk of the water off the top, they will not actually be, you're not going to be able to see that, but they won't actually be suctioned down, because the water inside those jars are extremely hot. Here, you can see it on that one. Now what we have to have happen is, as they cool down, gradually they will click. So I'm going to try and record it, the process. It's 2:52 right now. Try and take a video through Steam. Seems a little tough. 2:52 right now. They usually take 15, maybe 20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and try and record to try and catch the act of the thing cooling down and the lid sucking in and popping. It's a satisfying sound. And that's 3 lids, all properly sealed. It's currently 2:57. That's it. That's our 3 jars of preserved whole berry cranberry sauce and some fresh whole berry cranberry sauce for a crowd. Hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks.